I'm going to now turn it over to my colleague Ben Siegel, who's going to provide a live demonstration of completing these forms in the online service. As I mentioned, go ahead and enter any questions in your GoToWebinar right-hand window, and we'll check in at the end of the demonstration.
Thank you, Hosty. As she said, my name is Ben Siegel. I'm Manager of Contract Documents Information here at the AIA, and I am going to log in and show you the contract documents, the change order and payment application forms. As she mentioned, there are a lot of other forms that we publish and a lot of other agreements too, but I'm mainly going to focus on the change order G701 and the payment application G702 and the continuation sheet G703. So I'm going to get logged in right now. So there are various tutorials on the ACD5 program, and if you haven't seen them, I recommend doing that. I'm not going to go into great detail, but I do want to show you a few things prior to creating these documents. You see that I can just click Project Data. So this is where the project data lives, and so you can see that I have members of the project team, owner, several subcontractors here, several contractors, and other parties. So it's important to set that up first before you create a document, because that way the information will go into the document. So the first document I'm going to do is the change order. So I'm going to go to a project. I have a project, and so I'm going to go to this particular project that I have. Again, I'll show you the project data for here. And then I'm going to create a document. So I'm going to click Create Document. Go to the filter by area, type in G701, and you can see the change order, or rather the various versions of the change order. So this first one is the regular change order. It was updated just last year. The CMA version is for Construction Manager Advisor, and that's from 1992, and the S is for subcontractor. That little S there stands for subcontractor. So let's just start with the regular G701 change order. This pop-up box is very important for the change order and also for the payment applications. So it's going to let me import from previous change orders, which, as you can see, is not selected here because this is the first one. And this is from contractor to owner. If I had chosen the S version, it would have been from subcontractor to contractor. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK to create the document. I have more than one contractor here, so I can choose which one of these to select, and then I just click OK. It's going to put that information in here. So you can see along the top that I have the architect, the owner, and it asks me for which contractor, which is here. So that information at the top all comes from the project data. You can see this is the first change order, so it says number 1. And this other information is all about the project. So now below here is where we have the sort of the meat of it, so to speak. So this first blank is the contract is changed as follows, and in parentheses it just basically says insert the change. So as Hosty mentioned, this doesn't have to be dollars and cents. This can be any type of change of any sort at all to an owner-contractor agreement, or in the case of the G701S, the contractor-subcontractor agreement. So if you click this edit button, you can enter whatever you want here. Click OK. It's going to appear in this field. So again, you can put whatever you want here. You can reference an attachment. You can list breakdowns, any of that stuff. But I know that obviously most people think of change orders as being dollars and cents, so that's where you get to the next part. So the original contract sum, or GMP, was, and this again comes from the project data, so I just put in $1,000. Prior change orders, there weren't any. So the third line is just adding up these two lines. So that's all the first 3 lines are. Original sum, prior change orders, and then the change order prior to, or the contract sum prior to this change order. Now we get to this change order, so the contract sum will be, and you can select increase, decrease, or stay the same. So if I put in an amount here, and as soon as I click to the next field, you see that it calculates. So $1,000 prior, $100 change order, $1,100 new contract sum. If I select decrease, it'll deduct. You do not want to put a minus sign or parentheses here because that'll actually end up adding it. So little tip there, if it's decrease, put decrease, but just put the dollar value of that, and it'll calculate there. So that'll get you the new contract sum. By the same token, you can increase or decrease or leave unchanged the contract time, and then put in a new date of substantial completion if you want. And so these are just fill point fields that you're filling out. So it's relatively straightforward, the change order, just the amount of the change order and the new sum, and that's it. Then this is where the various parties sign. So we have the architect, the contractor, and the owner. These little signature sections below are where they actually sign, and this is their printed name of the person or company, and then of course the date. So that is pretty much it for the change order. I'm going to go ahead and save that. I'm going to save it into this project. You see how it says number 1, 001. It says draft has been successfully saved, so I know it's saved. I can close it. It's going to ask me if I want to save again. This is just so you don't accidentally close it without saving. Because keep in mind you're working online here. And it's going to save the document again and close it, and then you'll see it listed in the project tab. Okay, so you can see here that this first one right here is the document I just created, form draft 001. It's a draft. I can finalize it, but you don't have to do that right away. So I can create a new document, which I'm going to go ahead and do right now. And create another change order of the same type. And I'm going to use the same pop-up box that we saw before, but this time I'm going to be able to import from the change order that I just did. So now it's going to create a new change order, and it's going to give me the information from the prior change order. So original contract sum, prior change order was -$1,000, giving us a total of $900 prior to this change order, and then I can say maybe this is increased by 100 or so, and that gets us to that amount. So again, this is just simple math here. By selecting import, I import the previous amount, and it gives me the amount prior to change order. And then starting here with line 4, I just go with the current change order. And that is the same type of form. You're just importing from the previous. And so you're creating a new document, an entirely new document, a new draft, importing from the previous, and this is the change order 002, the second change order. So again, I'll just save it into this project, saving it as number 2. It's been saved, close it again, save again, just to make sure. And now you can see I have 2 change orders, 1 and 2. Now I can finalize these, but again, you don't have to finalize before you move on to the next change order, or as you'll see, the next pay app. So if you just click finalize, that'll create a final document, but it's not necessary to do, so I won't do it right now. I'm going to start and go ahead and look the G703 now. So for moving on to the pay apps, G703 and G702. So I'll start with the 703. Again, you can see there are different versions, the regular version and then the S or subcontract version for the G703. So I'm going to start with this regular version. Again, you see the pop-up box. It's very similar looking. And again, I can't import because there's no prior. So I click OK. And then I get a brand new G703. And this is what it looks like. As you can see, it's just a table. So I'm going to go over each of these columns and what they are, and then we'll move to the next one. So actually starting up, so you can see this is application number 1 here at the top. It puts in the architect's project number if you have that. The date is just the date of the application. You can put whatever date you want, today. And then period 2 is just the period covering this application. So from the prior pay period to whenever this is. So maybe it's from February 1 to March 1. just for an example. So moving on to the actual body of it, the first column, column A, is for item number. So this can be sequential, 1, 2, 3, 4, or it can be any other number that you designate. So it could be a master spec or master format numbering system, whatever format you decide to use. So that's just, I'll just put 1 here. And I'm just going to put in some basic information here, say bricks. And then let's see here, mortar. Just some basic things here. I am going to put a change order here just to show that all the line items here, including change orders, they each get their own row. So then, so description of work obviously is description of work, pretty obvious, including change orders here, and then the scheduled value is just the scheduled value of that item. So maybe I have $500 worth of bricks and $500 worth of mortar. These numbers aren't going to match exactly. I'm just putting in basic basic numbers here. So that's just the total scheduled value. Column C is the total scheduled value of that item. The D and E are work completed. So D is work completed from prior pay period. E is work completed from this current pay period. So for the first pay app, this is going to be 0, column D. But column E is going to have the dollar amount of work that was done this period. So let's say $400 for that. And we can say column F is stored material. So you can see that it's not in columns D or E. So it's separate from these columns. So if I had, let's say, $100 worth of bricks on a pallet somewhere, and I could put that here. And you can see that as I'm entering this information, it's adding all these things up. So column G, both parts of column G, I should say, are adding up and giving you an amount. So it's adding all these things up. 0 plus 400 plus 100, $500, which is 100% complete. And it gives you a balance to finish, which is the total scheduled value, C, minus the total that's been done. So that's $0 for this. And then for retainage here is only for a variable rate. So retainage can be fixed or variable. If it's fixed, you actually don't put anything here at all. If it's variable, you would put the dollar amount in column I for every single line item, which obviously is more time-consuming if you have a bunch of line items. And that is basically it. You're just listing each item, including change orders. If you had a subtotal, you could put it here also in the description of work. You would not want to fill out the other columns starting with C and over to the right, D, E, F, G, H, I, because that would obviously add into the grand total. So you wouldn't want that. But you could put it here. You could create an item, call it subtotal, and put, an amount there, and that's fine. But any other amounts in column C, D, E, F, G, H, I, that's going to add up, which obviously you don't want. So you can just leave the rest of these columns blank for a subtotal line. And it's going to add up into the grand total, which again you wouldn't want for the subtotal, but I just put that there. And you can also add rows or delete rows. So if I put my cursor somewhere, I can just delete rows. I can put a right here and add a row. So you can play around with it there. This is similar to an Excel spreadsheet, although it's not identical, but you're just basically filling out these items and then it'll add up the total. So I'm going to save it again. This is number 1, first G703. So I'm saving it, and I'm going to close it, and then save again. And now I'm going to do my G702. So you can see here, listed here is the G703 I just did. So now I'm ready to do my G702. So I create a document. Again, there are different versions, the S version, subcontractor, and the regular version. So I'm going to do the regular version, this first one here. So again, you see the pop-up box. Each pop-up box is a little bit different, similar but different. So I can select fixed or variable. So if I select fixed, I'll be able to put in a percentage. This is the project that it's in, which is I've already selected. And this import is from previous G702, which I don't have yet, because this is the first pay period. But I can import from the previous G703. That's the one I just did. And that's listed here. So I have to click the box and select one G703 that I just did and link them together and click OK, and now it's going to create it. Again, I have multiple contractors and multiple subcontractors, so I can just select them and it will go in. So this is what the G702 looks like. You can see again the top information from the project is all going up here. This is the application number 1, and the period 2, and all that stuff. So to start with line 1, the original contract sum, again, that comes from the project data. And again, these numbers aren't going to match exactly. I'm just putting in random numbers. But line 2 is net change by change orders. So you actually don't change this directly. What you do is you actually fill out the change order summary down here. So the change order summary is just 2 columns, additions and deductions, and 2 rows. Change orders from previous months and from this month. So you put in a number here. I'll just put in a couple random numbers here, and so I just have some random numbers here for additions and deductions, and it adds that up and gives me a total, which it then puts up into line 2. And that's the net. So it's a net change. So as I said on the G703, you're listing each change order as a line item on G703. And then you're summarizing it here on the G702 in this box, change order summary box, and that automatically puts it into line 2. And then line 3 is automatically calculated from the above, line 1 plus or minus line 2. And also you can see that it tells you what each line is supposed to be. So that's the calculation there. Line 4 is the total completed and stored to date. So this comes from G703, column G. So that's what that amount is. I didn't have to put anything there because it automatically knew that that's what that was. For retainage, line 5, I put fixed so I can put a percentage here. I'll put 10%. And then I can put that in 5A and 5B. So this is a percentage of all completed work. So it's all completed work, so it's D and E. So if you remember from the G703, column D was work completed from prior period, and column E was work completed from this period. So it's adding all that together, D and E, and getting you a total of $510. And I said I'm having 10% retainage on that for $51. It's the same thing for store material, except for that's just one column, column F. So it just gives you the total of that column. I can put in the same or different percentage, and then it'll calculate that, add these two numbers together, and give you a total retainage. Retainage, of course, is an amount that is retained or withheld from the pay application, so that's going to be subtracted from the total. So this next line, line 6, is line 4, which is the total completed and stored to date, minus the retainage, giving you the total earned less retainage. This next line is for prior pay periods. So this comes from line 6 from the prior certificate. So obviously for our first pay period, that's going to be 0. And that's all that is. The next time when I do my second pay period, it's going to be this number, 554. My next pay period, that number is going to be here when I do my next pay period. And that just gets you a current, so it subtracts that number, whatever this is. So it's the current payment due is just simply line 6 minus line 7, and that gives you the current payment due. And then line 9, the final line, is just the balance to finish. So that's what's left to be paid. So each of these are calculations. The ones in white are the ones that you can't edit directly. They're calculations, so it's just plus or minus another field. And you'll also notice on the right-hand side we have the amount certified. So that is coming from the current payment due here. Obviously, we know that the amount certified might not be the same as the amount that the contractor requests, but this is supposed to be theoretically in a perfect world, that's the amount. The architect can put in a different amount here if they want. And that brings us to the right side of this, which is where the contractor is saying that they're submitting this application, they sign it in this little section here, and then date it, state, the county. If you need it to be notarized, there's a section for a notary public. We can't tell you if you need to notarize it, but if you do need to notarize it, there's a section there. And then the architect is certifying the payment. So there's a section for that here as well, the amount, and then for the architect to sign, and of course date. So I'm going to go ahead and save that, and I will do just one other quick one, another G703 and another G702 for the next pay app, just so that you can see how it imports. But that is essentially it. So now, you can see I have my drafts that I've created. My G703 number 1, my G702 number 1. I'll go ahead and create a new document. So I'm on to my next pay period. So I'm going to create a new document and import. So I'm not going into the prior pay period at all. I'm just creating a brand new document, but I'm importing from the first one that I did. So I'm now onto my second pay period. When I click OK, it's going to give me the second application, second pay period, number 2, but it's going to repeat all this information here. So all this stuff is going to be here. I don't have to retype it. And certain things are going to change. For example, everything that was in this period is now in prior period. So it knows to move that over from work completed this period to work completed prior period. You notice that it does not move over store material, and that's because this amount could still be stored, or it could be incorporated into the work. Whether or not the contractor has actually been paid has no bearing on this. The contractor is paid when it goes in. And so once it's in, then it stays there until such point as it is incorporated into the work. So if on the second pay period it's still there, the bricks are still laying on the pallet, then I just do nothing with it. I just leave it there. If it's been incorporated into the work, like let's say that some of it has been incorporated into the work, $30 worth of it. So I just subtract the $30 from here and add the $30 to work completed. So I've now broken out the $100 that was here, subtracted 30 from it, and added a 30 to column E. You'll notice that this does not change the total completed and stored to date because it's D plus E plus F. So moving it from F to E doesn't change that at all. So it's still the same total, still 100%, still balanced to finish 0. And then you can fill in the rest of the items here. And that is basically it. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. So you're updating it for the current pay period. And then you can close it. Now I have my second G703. And now I'll create my second G702. It'll give me the same pop-up box as before. I can switch to a variable rate if I want, which I'll do in this case. And I can import from 702. Actually, I'm going to cancel out of this really quickly. Sorry. I'm going to go into the 703. Let's say we had a variable rate. I'll put in some retainage. I'm going to go back, so I'm going back into my 703 now. And I'll talk about a variable rate retainage. While we're waiting, what I'm going to do is go into column I and put an amount. So if I'm assuming that I now have a variable rate, I'll go in here and I'll just put some, oops, not that much. I'll just put in some retainage. So let's say I have retainage on one line item, but no retainage on the other. So it's going to give me that amount. And so it's going to, again, give me a grand total here. So I'll go ahead and save this. So we're going to make that change to column I. I'm going to close it, and now I'm going to create the G702. Okay, so now I'm going to tell it that it's a variable rate. And I'm going to do my importing. So I'm going to import from the prior pay period, that's what this is. And I'm going to import from the 703. I'm going to have two choices. So I'm going to import from the second 703 for this second pay period. So again, importing from the first G702 into this G702 and importing from the second 703, the corresponding one for this pay period. Click OK. Again, it asks me about party members. And so now I have my second G702. And you can see that it imported the data. The only difference here is that I told it that it was a variable rate, so I can't put anything here because it is now a variable rate retainage. So instead, it gives me the total of column I, which is now this number. And so that's the total of column I from the 703. So that's what this number is now, right here. And then that gives me a new amount. You can see that, again, this is the number I mentioned before. So from the prior certificate, line 6 from the prior certificate is here, and that gives you the current payment due. And so that is essentially it for the change orders and payment applications. The only next step is to finalize, which is a pretty simple thing. I can finalize any of these documents, but that just creates a final document. So now we can open it up to questions, and so I'll get Hosti's help with that, and I will answer the questions that you may have.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead. We'll read the first one. Is there a handout for this presentation? There is. Everyone will be emailed the recording along with the handout and additional information.
Okay, so there's a question about tabbing and aligning the text and the amounts in the G701. And so I'm not on the technical side, but there is a limitation with the online form, and being able to format it is a little bit of an issue. I can go into the, let's see here, move this. Go into the G701 to show what I think this person is asking about. So it's right here in this editing section. There's a limited amount of formatting that you can do here. So it is, to be honest, somewhat difficult to do that. But you can put amounts and you can put numbers and text and whatever you want in this form. But to be honest, it is a little bit difficult to align that completely properly. So you can put that in there, but it's not exactly like Word, like Microsoft Word, where you can set tabs. So I'm sorry that I don't have a really good answer for that. So let's see here. Okay. So a question about the G703. And so I believe about is G703 now capable of handling over 245 lines? My understanding is that the lines is 250, but we are working to increase that. I don't know of the exact number that it will be or a date. I haven't been told that, so we are working to expand that, hopefully to something much more than that on the G703. But as of right now, I think it stands at 250 lines. Okay, the next question is about adding an additional signature on the G702. And so that is a little bit tricky to do because this is a form. These are all forms, the ones that I'm talking about. So the text, things like this, is locked. You can't edit these things. So you can't really add an extra signature section here. This is the G701, but the person was asking about the G702. But it's still the same principle that you can't really edit it electronically. Now you can obviously print it. Once you do the final, you can print it and write on it with a pen. I know that's not an ideal solution, but that is at least one way of doing it. Let's see here. So this is about retainage. Would you consider putting a retainage amount, for example, 5%, in the job setup portion and have G703 automatically read that and enter the correct retainage every time? So Again, retainage can be fixed or variable. So if it's fixed, you're putting it in the G702. You're not putting it in the G703. So it wouldn't go into the G703 at all if it was a fixed rate. The only time that it would go into the G703 at all is if it was a variable rate. So I think, and the next question I think is from the same person, is setting up the job and putting in the retainage. So there is the project data, but there's not a place to put that in the project data because again it could change. It can be fixed or variable, and it could also change. So I think we're talking about this area of the project data, but again it can go from a fixed rate of 5% to a fixed rate of 10% to a variable rate. So it can change too frequently. So the idea is that on the 703, you list it there if it's variable. If it's fixed, you just ignore that column and you put it in the G702. All right. This is about entering, inputting information and not putting it as an additional line. I think that is talking about the G703. If you put a bunch of information in the description of work column, it should wrap. The text should wrap. So it may not appear as if it's wrapping, but I actually asked the text support folks about this, and it should in fact wrap. So when you do the final, it should wrap to expand the rows. I hope that answers the question if I'm understanding it correctly. Let's see here. There are a lot of questions about formatting. I think I covered most of that. Just looking through the remaining questions. I think I've gotten to most of these. Okay, here's a question about the G702. Can the dollar fields be changed to accounting format? The dollar sign on the left and the pound sign on the right aligned on decimal. No, because this is just set up as just regular dollars, and so you'd have to put in just the raw number, and it'll convert that to dollars and cents, to money, to dollars and cents, meaning dollar sign, not the dollars, period, the cents, and then that's it. So it doesn't go into an accounting or other type of format. Okay. Here's a question about calculations on the individual cells of the G703. There are calculations in the G703, just like there are in the G702 and the G701, but you can't override that or put in new amounts or anything like that. You can put in the numbers and it'll calculate, but it doesn't let you put in a new formula or edit an existing formula. The formulas that are there are locked. Here's a question, do you finalize each application so you can print it? So yes, eventually you do, and I can certainly do that right now. I'll just go ahead and I'll finalize, it doesn't even matter which one, I'll just finalize this one. So you can do written or digital, that's one difference. Written just keeps it as it is. I'll do digital, and that way you can see the digital signature page. And that's the only difference, is that it, let's open it. Okay, so here's the final document. It doesn't have the draft watermark that obviously the draft does, and everything here is locked. This is the digital, so if you did a written, then the parties would just sign here and here. But I did digital, so what it does is it inserts digital signatures here in the second page. So instead of one page, it's 2 pages, and you can insert digital signatures there, and that's through Adobe or whatever PDF program you happen to be using. So that's what the final, this is what the final looks like. Okay. So here's a question about store material. When you moved a portion of the store material amount and then put it in the current month, wouldn't the customer have already paid the store material amount since it adds in the total billing amount? You would then be invoicing the amount in the second month that you put in the current payment. So the answer to the first question is yes, the customer would already have paid it, but it's not double billing because it's already been paid. So it's going to come out in, actually, since I have the G702 up, it's going to come out here in this line 7, less previous certificates for payment. So when it goes into store material, it goes into work completed, or, well, I'm sorry, total completed and stored to date. So in the G703, store material is going to come into here. So it is going to get into line 4, so it's going to get paid at that point. After that point, even if it stays there or if it moves over into work completed, either way, it's going to come out in this line. So it's not double billing it, it's just saying that this is coming out from the, any amounts that were prior paid are going to come out in line 7 of the G702. So it's not actually, double billing. This is how did you set up the project team? So I can show that. So I did that before this because I didn't want to take the time from this presentation. But if you were to create a new project, you can. This is where you would put in the project name, the description. You would fill out all of these items here that you see, and the project type, and all this stuff. The people's names and addresses you would actually get here where it says project team, and it says click add team member. So I would add a team member, and this comes from my contacts. So I can choose contacts that I want to put in here, and then it's going to save that. And so I will put I'll just go ahead and just save this really quickly. So now that I've added members of the project team, it's going to be here. You can always edit project data, which is at the top there, and then you can just edit this information. So again, you go to add team member. If you want to create a new contact, you can go here and create a contact. Then you have to fill out all this information. Again, I'm not going to go through all this because this is a little bit outside the scope, but basically you create a contact and you put that contact in here as part of the project team, and then in that way the people's names and addresses and everything will go in. And so let's see here. So I think I sort of covered this in general, but this is more specific. This is G703 column I. Can that be formulated? And so the answer is no, it can't, because that's supposed to be for a variable rate. And so you're supposed to put in the dollar amount, whatever that is, for every single line item. And so there's not a formula or some sort of calculation you can put in automatically. You would have to do that. And again, if it was a fixed rate, you wouldn't bother with that at all. You would just put it in the G702, and it's already there. Okay. So here's another question. If I have to change the change order number to make 4 into 3, will the numbers be okay as long as I save? Well, you can change the name of a document. So let me go back to the project I was working on. So this is the name of the document. These are the names here. And it says form draft 1, final. You know, this final came from the second one, so it says 2. Because it's this, I finalized this one right here. You can change that, and you can also change the application number within the document. So if I wanted to go in here and change this application number, I certainly can do that. I would give a word of caution just to make sure that you don't confuse yourself, because you can create a lot of different drafts, and it can be a little bit confusing to see these things. But if the question is, can you change the application number? Sure, absolutely you can. But I would just say be careful about that because, again, you're going to have a G703 draft and a G702 draft for each pay period, and you're going to have a final for each pay period as well. That's 4 total files. So here's my form draft 1 and 703. Here's my form draft 1 and 702. You're going to have finals of each of these. That's 4 things to keep track of. So just be careful with doing that just as a practical matter. This question is, how do you access the Excel spreadsheet? So what I've been doing is online. So I'm in online editing, which is in what we call the online editor. And it is similar to Excel. It's not identical, but it's similar to Excel. It has formulas. You put in the numbers, it calculates. If you wanted to, you could download. Go on More Actions, and you could download. In that case, it would download to your desktop, and it would be, the draft would be in Word, or in this case Excel, and then you could work with it that way. But keep in mind that you'd have to upload it with the Import File button, which is right next to the Create Document button here. And so you can do that, but I recommend with these forms at least that you do it online. For agreements, we actually recommend working offline, because that way you're working in Microsoft Word, with which you're familiar. But with these forms, to do the importing, it needs to be online. So yes, you can download it, and the G702 and G703 would be in Excel. The G701 would be in Word. So you can do that, but with these forms, the G701, G702, and G703, I would really recommend keeping it online. So here's the question. When I start my first change order and the customer information and project information doesn't come over, is it because the original subcontract was done online instead of offline? That may be the case, because you do have to have the online information here in the project data. So when you create a document online, it's going to pull from this project information, which is also online. So if this stuff isn't there, it's not going to go in. So that's where all that stuff comes from. Even if you import from the previous change order or the previous pay app, it's not going to pull people's names and addresses from that. It pulls it from the project data. Oh, so I think this is a follow-up. For the G702, I'm asking if your technical crew can change the cells to accounting font, not the user changing it. That I'm not sure about. I'd have to ask the technical people. I'm not sure if that's possible the way it's inputted, but we can certainly take that into account. Let's see here. Question of downloading form, yes. This next question is, why can't you edit project contacts? You can. So if you go to the Contacts tab, you can edit these contacts here. You can delete them with the little trash icon. You can also edit them. So this is a contact that I have set up, and so I can edit this person, this contact, the firm, and all that stuff. So you can edit it here. So that's in the Contacts tab, and then when you go to the Projects tab, that's where you're pulling in information. Again, I'm going to click View Project Data. So it's going to enter information here. So you set up a contact in the Contacts tab here, and then you can pull that contact into the project team. Okay, this looks like the final question. If I'm canceling a change order, am I creating a new change order with a new number and decreasing the amount of contract sum instead of increasing? Well, if I'm understanding correctly, you could do it either way. If you're doing a deductive change order, then that is a new change order with an amount that is negative instead of positive. If you want to cancel a change order, I suppose you could create a new one and say, just forget that last one that we did. And then, so that's really up to you. A lot of these things are up to you. If you want to create a new change order, like let's say you have 6 change orders and you want to cancel the most recent one, the 6th, you can say, well, I'm going to create a 7th change order that cancels the 6th. Then you have to keep that in mind. Or somehow, that's just a project thing, however you want to keep track of those files. So I think that is it in terms of the questions that we've gotten. I don't see any more. I hope I was able to answer everything to everybody's satisfaction. Let's see. Oh. Avoiding a change order, use an R after the number. Okay. So that would be one way of doing it, is just to put in an R or something like that. And then you can do it that way. So thank you for that suggestion. And so that is it for me. Thank you, and I hope that I was able to answer everybody's questions and walk you through the process.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for attending today's webinar and your great questions. We hope you found the training helpful. You will receive the recording along with a write-up that we have of the payment application change order procedure. So look forward to that. That will be coming shortly, hopefully by tomorrow. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. You can actually contact Ben at docinfo@aia.org or 202-626-7526. If you ever have any questions about content or our documents or forms, you can contact Ben. Any questions regarding the online service itself, please direct that to tech support. You see their information in the second bullet here. And lastly, we do advertise for upcoming education, recorded on-demand education, and other resources on our Learn page at aiacontracts.org/learn. So again, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you being a customer of AIA Contract Documents.